Welcome to Crafting for Profit Live. We're on episode 18 this week. And if you've ever found yourself staring at your craft table, zero motivation, feeling stuck, overwhelmed, today's episode is just for you.
So let's be real for a second. We've all been there. One day you're buzzing with ideas and you can't wait to dive in and design your next product or make your next product. And the next day you're like struggling to pick up your scissors. Staying motivated when you are Staying motivated when you run a small craft business can feel like riding a roller coaster. They have the highest highs and other days, not so much.
So, we do have some good news in all of that. Motivation doesn't have to be so elusive. So, we're going to share our proven, simple, powerful ways to get your mojo back. So, when you're in that creative slump, listen to this episode because it's going to be reoccurring. And trust us, you'll want to stick around because some of these might be the exact boost that you need to get motivated right now.
If you are watching us live on YouTube, you can ask questions live, but we will stay on topic as much as possible. We will answer all your motivation questions toward the end of this episode. Off-topic questions can be submitted in the form that we have in the YouTube description and the podcast notes.
All right, so we're going to dive into motivation strategies. Our first kind of group is rediscovering joy in your craft. And I do find this is one of the top ones for me.
Me too.
Definitely find joy in the process, not just the outcome. Finding that thing that made you start crafting to begin with, because I feel like all of us start with a passion. We start this business, or even if you don't have a craft business, you start crafting because you're passionate about it, you love it. And going back to that and trying to find that joy back again is often where I sort of land when I am in that motivation slump.
Yeah, I feel the same way. For sometimes I will basically turn off my kind of business mode and spend an hour or two, sometimes longer, sometimes less, just creating purely for fun. Like just something that I want to make for me, something that I had wanted to try for a while. I feel like sometimes we just continually, especially when we're running small businesses, we just make to make. And I'm like, you know what? There's a reason I'm doing this, and it's because it used to be fun. Why isn't it fun right now? And so I generally pick up something else just for me.
And often you could set aside a day, once a month or once a quarter, whatever, and just experiment that day. Just go crazy and experiment. And sometimes I do this chopped style. So if you've ever watched Chopped on the Food Network, so I say these are the four things I have on hand, right? So I have these four things on hand. I'm not going to purchase anything to get out of the slump. These are four things that are in my craft room. I need to use all four of these in one project. What can I do? So often that sort of just sparks my creativity. And it doesn't matter if it turns out good or not. I just want to spark the creativity, bring the joy back, bring that motivation back.
Yeah, I found that sort of brainstorming, like just different ways to use the products that I have or the supplies that I have is way better than going out and being like, I'm going to try a whole new craft, right? Because one, that's expensive. Two, do we all need another craft? Probably not. And so it's really just kind of digging in what you already have and trying to figure out, what you can do with it.
And sometimes I see those cool crafts on Instagram or whatever, and you're like, I want to try that. But you can also flip the chop challenge in another way. Like, what can I make that same thing with what I have on hand instead of the kit they're using or the supplies they're using? Like, can I make it me and with what I have on hand or flip it to a Cricut craft, something like that?
Yeah, I love that idea. All right, number two, and this one's probably one of the biggest for me, and we're calling it move your body and reset your mind. And this is something that I've really spent some time on, and I think I've talked about it in previous episodes, that I have stopped sitting all day. And that's hard when I'm running a business and I'm making a bunch of things and I just, kind of get into that mode. Or if I'm doing computer work, which I do a lot of, I can just sit for a long time. And so I have a timer to get up and basically I call it move my bones. That's like my boys will come in. They're like, Mom, have you moved your bones? I'm like, oh, I got to move my bones. So usually that's going for a walk. It's standing up, cleaning my craft room, running in, putting in a load of laundry, just stepping away for half a second to reset. I feel like that's really helpful for me.
Even scheduling that time into your day, seriously set aside time. And mine is often in the middle of the day. Be sure to take a lunch break, first of all. Don't just stand there and eat, gobble down your lunch and then start working again. So take your lunch break, schedule that time in, schedule time to move, take a walk, even do something fun and relaxing. So for me, I often like read a little bit at lunch, or I might turn on a television show for a few minutes, and it just sort of helps my mind relax so I can get back to work and feel a little bit more motivated in the afternoon.
Yeah, so our kind of first practical tip here would be to take a 10-minute walk, make sure you're standing up every 90 minutes. There are days when I will set my timer and stand up for 5 minutes every 15 minutes when I'm just feeling particularly sluggish. I'm like, okay, and that is a lot, right? I'm standing up for 5 minutes every 15 minutes, and I will just go walk around, I will clean up, I will just move my body. And I think that the physical act of moving my bones is just a great reset, because even though you can get into the flow while crafting, I think sometimes you also can get stuck, right? You're just staring at your supplies, or you're staring at your computer, or whatever it is. And you're just like, ugh. But if you get up, move around, come back, know that you only have to work for another 15 minutes, I feel like that's really motivating.
I often look up on Amazon like 15-minute yoga workout,
Yeah.
10-minute yoga workout. There are tons of those that are very short. So if you only have 5-10 minutes, you can find yoga workouts. Often the Amazon thing on our television is full of my Amazon workouts instead of actual programming. But yeah, you can definitely find ways to stretch. So just look up 15-minute stretching exercises on your Amazon account or even on YouTube, and you can find tons of those. And even if you spend 5 minutes doing it, you've moved your body.
Yep. And then, like Angie said, schedule it in, because sometimes we just won't do it. For me, I'm actually very lucky. So my family lives down the street. My parents live down the street. And I get a text almost every morning, hey, when are we walking today? Which means that at some point, my mom and my dad are going to walk down the street, and I'm going to go walk around the block with them. And that keeps them active because they're in their 70s, and it keeps me active. And I just really like it because, like, they're going on a trip leaving tomorrow actually for 3 weeks. And I'm like, who am I going to walk with? I'm going to have to actually schedule it in, because I can't just sit at my desk and not move my bones enough.
All right. So our next group is inspiring your creativity with music, podcasts, or audiobooks. Basically, listening to something that fuels your soul, whatever it is. It could be this podcast, it could be your podcast about your favorite book series, whatever it is that sort of fuels your soul. And it often elevates your mood, and it can also spark new ideas, new craft ideas. So, uplifting podcasts, inspiring stories are often really good. Audiobooks, I really like those. I also have a ton of playlists that I listen to, and you can definitely like I just go to Spotify sometimes and I'm like inspiring playlist or get moving playlist, cleaning playlist, something like that just gets you moving and motivated to like move.
I like a girl power playlist. Like I want some yelling by some women. And that's like really motivating for me. And sometimes, a lot of times I'll listen to business podcast or business audiobook, but sometimes I'm like, nope, I just want some fiction. I want to listen to some fantasy or sci-fi or something. And I find that that kind of pulls me into a different world. And when you're in a different world, there's different things. And I think that can help break up the monotony of making every day.
And this can also go back to the move your bones one, I feel like, because I find that I move my bones a lot longer and I don't get bored doing my exercise routines if I just pop my audiobook on. I'll pop my audiobook on and I will walk just to finish a few chapters. So if I say to myself, I have to walk in order to listen to this book, I will walk longer just to finish a couple more chapters.
Right, I'm like, I could do one more lap." Angie and I are both big audiobook listeners, so that's kind of, I think, where we head, but, I mean, music, obviously, people love music. Put on some Taylor Swift, do a little dance. There's also, if you find it more calming, you could do something that's more calming when it comes to, what you're listening to. One of my favorite things to do is actually to go to YouTube and find no ad concentration music. And it basically, I don't know the science behind it, but there are different types of megahertz, gigahertz beats or whatever that sort of are designed to help with creativity and those sorts of things. And so there's a couple that I really like. I go back to them. They're like 3 hours long, so I don't have to like constantly restart them. But that's another way to do it too. If you're not like, I don't want to, get up off my butt and dance. I just want to be relaxed and in the zone and being creative, then YouTube playlist is a good idea.
I've heard this tip and I think it was from Nicole, but I've not tried it. But it was find music with a good beat that's in another language. And that way you won't lose your focus. So you can do that while you're working. And if you don't know the language, like your mind doesn't go to the song, but the uplifting beats, or if you like calming beats, sort of calm you or get you motivated without distracting you.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
My mom listens to, like, French pop music. I don't know how she found it, but sometimes I go over there, I'm like, "This is not in English," but she loves it, and I can totally understand why it's, like, fun and, but it's not quite as distracting as it could be if it was, like, something that you loved. Like, if you
Yeah.
put the Hamilton soundtrack on, apparently I'm just gonna rap for an hour.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay attention, like with the audiobook, I feel like I need to pay attention to it, so I'll know what
Right.
happens is gonna happen, but a song in another language, you don't even have to pay attention.
Perfect. All right. Our next tip is to take a digital detox. So we just talked about like things that actually involve devices, but there is also something to be said for just stepping away from your screens, disconnecting from social media, disconnecting from email, just focusing on creating. This is one of the things that our business coach has really drilled into me too. It's like, okay, just go set your phone in another room. If I find myself getting distracted, especially, and I just, I'm like, oh, I just can't think of what I want to work on or blah, blah, blah. I'm just not motivated. I find myself, endless scroll, which then puts me into a spiral of, oh my God, look at all these amazing things somebody else is doing. And that's not healthy. So I will literally go set my phone inside the house and come back out to my studio just so I can have a few minutes of breathing space.
Do not disturb on your phone, that's your friend. I also have a timer for my app, so they turn off at a certain time of the day, and I have to literally hit a button to be able to open the app, and that sort of makes me take a digital detox because I need some time every day where I'm winding down, not on social media, and I have to force myself to do that. Physically
Yeah.
force myself. Like you said, phone in another room. I have my apps where they just shut down I have my apps where they just shut down at a certain time, and that way, if I'm on my phone, it's like, "You have 5 more minutes."
You're like, you're so judgy, phone. But also thanks. All right. So, if you guys have been listening to the podcast, if you're familiar with Crafting for Profit, you may have heard that right now we are actually right in the middle of an event that we are hosting right now. So, it is Crafting for Profit Camp Holiday Edition. Today is the first day. It is a 3-day event and it is live. And for the next 3 days, it's going to be free. So, if you're listening to the podcast, sorry, this is already going to be over by the time you listen to the podcast. However, if you want to hop on for Crafting for Profit Holiday Edition, it's today, tomorrow, and Saturday. We have 21 classes from 15 different speakers on a wide range of topics having to do with crafting for the holidays for your business. Then grab your free ticket. I can see that Angie has put the links there down at the bottom of the screen. It's scrolling as well as the QR code.
So if you're joining us live on YouTube and you haven't grabbed a ticket, grab your ticket. You still have time to join us. Of course, if you listen to the podcast on Monday, this will be over. You will need all access pass to access it, but you still can join us. So it's craftingforprofitcamp.com. And I mean, any type of holiday sales, if you want to make more money around the holidays selling your crafts, craft fairs, holiday markets, Black Friday sales. We have tons of different content, tons of speakers, and events like this, I also feel like it ties back to finding your mojo and getting your motivation because watching classes like this and seeing other people and interacting in a group often motivates me. Like the next 3 days will motivate me as a speaker and a host.
Yeah, it would definitely motivate me as a small business owner as well, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch Angie's class on Black Friday sale because I have historically failed at running a very good Black Friday sale. So I think that if you have any sort of ambitions to do anything for your business for the holidays, you should join us.
All right. So our next motivation tip category is attend a craft fair or event. So find those community gatherings where they are selling crafts or making crafts. There's some local events where they make stuff here. You can often get fresh ideas, motivation just by attending these, walking around, seeing what's popular, maybe getting ideas of things you want to try to make. You can often get those at those type of events.
I think it's so fun too. Every time I wander around a craft fair, I'm not necessarily being like, oh, I could make that, these sorts of things. It's more just like, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought that you could even do that with a laser, or wow, I didn't even realize that this is kind of trendy right now, and you just get these ideas. And when you allow yourself not to look at other booths as like your competition or something to copy, but instead just as inspiration, as wow, look at what we're doing as makers just in my community. It can be really powerful to kind of kick you in the pants.
I often just use it for like, okay, everyone here has these cute ghosts on things. I want to put cute ghosts maybe on something entirely different, but the motivation is there of everything they make and just kind of seeing what's popular in the market and maybe even putting your spin on it.
Yeah, I love that idea. I will often take my phone and just take notes in my notes app. My notes app is terrifying because I'm constantly like, "Oh, yeah, let's do this, let's do this. Oh, this is a great idea." You could also just have a physical paper journal, or you can, however you'd like to take notes, but I do feel like writing things down also so that you can go back to and refer to them later, when you're not in that moment is important as well.
I often take pictures and I find myself scrolling back years ago to craft fairs I went to and thinking, I was really inspired by that whatever wooden flag. I was going to put my spin on it. And I will find myself like going back, digging those out and getting inspired.
Angie, I think you froze. Can anybody else hear Angie right now? Let's see. Angie.
I'm still here.
Oh, you're there. Okay, good. Phew. We'll just
Well, are you
edit
sure it
this part
wasn't
out.
you?
I don't think it was me. Was it me? Let us know in the comments if you're watching this live, and we will edit this out for the podcast. Oh my goodness. I had something to say and then I just totally lost it. Oh, I think there is like be aware of taking pictures of people's booths, like ask permission, like if you can take photos in the booths, because I think some people, okay, can you see Angie now? Because she's saying she's frozen.
I think that was from before.
Is that from before?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Okay, good. We're good. We're good, people. I'm just going to start over here. I would say I would caution against maybe taking photos at craft booths unless you have permission from the person, because I think a lot of people do come to craft booths to like steal ideas, and we definitely don't want to be doing that or making people feel like that's what we're doing. But if you're like, hey, I'd like to take a picture of this, I like how you used this, and then especially if you buy something from their booth as well, and that sort of thing.
All right, our next group of tips is creating a new product. So, experimenting with something fresh, introducing new product ideas, just thinking about your niche, what can you add, and experimenting with that is often really fun. So, maybe you sell dog items, but you don't have dog bandanas. Purchasing some of those, experimenting with them. How would you make them? What would you put on them? It can often sort of motivate you and inspire you to even create more beyond that.
I have found that this is for my little craft business, this has been like the number one thing for me, where I'm kind of like, okay, I have the things that I make, and then I start making something that's kind of new. Like I made magnetic, ugh, I made mad, I cannot talk. I made magnetic bookmarks, and that was really exciting. I made Kindle inserts, and as I started creating all of these things, then I'm like, oh, I could also use these materials to make bookmarks, and my brain just like, "Doodle-doodle-doo," and it just totally starts to spiral in the best way, where you're like, oh my gosh, I have so many ideas that I don't even know where to start. And that's when you need to start writing them down.
Yeah, it often sparks a completely different direction than you were even thinking. You thought you were going to make dog bandanas, and then you're like, oh no, I'm going to make something completely different. So it often sort of leads you down a path of motivation. But just starting out and just experimenting with things can at least get you on that path to being motivated and creating new things. And you never know where it's going to lead.
And if you are doing shows regularly, or if you sell online, you can test out like maybe one new idea a month, right? I think sometimes we're like, wow, I have all these ideas. I'm going to try to get everything out there. But it's like, okay, no, let's just see how this one new product does, do a little push for it, make it a limited quantity, do a drop, that kind of thing. And when you do it that way, as opposed to just like flooding your audience with all of the new products, I feel like they're more likely to be like, oh my gosh, she only has 15 of these available. I'm going to snag one, versus, whoa, she's been busy.
And you could also, if it sparks tons of new ideas, you could release them slowly instead of all at once, and maybe, one a month, even if all the motivation came over a weekend. you could hold those products and actually release them slowly over time.
So hard to hold on to something that you're so excited about, but honestly, sometimes I think it's better not to, like, completely overwhelm your customer. Think about trends, think about what's hot right now, and just be like, "Okay, maybe this is the right thing to release right now, but we can wait until the spring for the next thing," that sort of thing. All right, next up, we are talking about building or joining a maker community. So we talk about this a lot. One of the main reasons we do this is because we think that small craft businesses are such a beautiful part of the community. And so when you connect with other crafters, you can find a lot of encouragement and inspiration.
So you can do this a variety of ways. I think the easiest way is a Facebook group, like our Crafting for Profit Camp Facebook group, if you've not joined that. So craftingforprofitcamp.com, get your free ticket to Crafting for Profit Camp, and you can join our Facebook group. And you can join it any time for free. We don't require that you actually join a camp. You can join a group. That's a great place to meet like-minded individuals that are all crafting for profit. You can also just search Facebook groups, right? So search local Facebook groups in your town, in your county. And there are often ones that are crafter groups, creative groups, artist groups are often very inspiring for me. So I just try to search local groups. And sometimes they even do meetups, which is even better because you can meet in person and not just online.
We have entrepreneurial group for our small community, and there are a lot of crafters in that group, and that was really fun to get connected with. And then I would also say you can meet people at craft fairs. Yes, we can look at everybody there as a competition, or we could look at them as friends, which I think Angie and I are much more into the community over competition sort of piece of things. And so just walk up to somebody, find somebody who looks friendly, start up a conversation. It can be really hard. I mean, I have lived here in Washington for 4.5 years, and I would say that I only have a handful of friends. Making friends as an adult is way harder than it was as making friends as a kid, especially with the political thing and all, like, just everything happening. It's just much harder to make friends. So you do have to be very intentional. It's not like they're just going to show up at your door. So maybe it's the parents of other kids at your kid's school, or maybe it is a church group. Maybe it is, you join a meetup, those sorts of things. But you have to be intentional because friends are not just going to come to you. You have to go out and find them.
It is so hard.
It's so hard.
And those crafting buddies can also be your accountability partners. If you've never heard of an accountability partner before, you need one. Basically, they're going to keep you accountable. You share your goals, and they keep you accountable to those goals. So you share your goals, you share your progress, you share, like, sometimes Corey and I share to-do lists, like, this is what we want to get done today. And at the end of the day, where are each of us at? How much did you get done? Like, what were the roadblocks to that? Just sort of those types of conversations often keep me motivated and just being accountable for the goals that I want to do and not getting sidetracked. I am the queen of going off on a tangent. I'm just going to be honest. So, not getting sidetracked on those goals and staying the course.
I am exactly the same. I have found that when we do our little to-do lists in our group, that is highly motivating for me because I love a list. And I want to check it all off. And I want you guys to see that I checked it all off. And then I can be like, I checked it all off. And it just is like incredibly motivating for me to have that sort of public accountability, even if it's just the four of us in our little company group. But yeah, so if you can find somebody that you can work with and say, these are my goals. If you're motivated by checking off a list publicly is even better.
100%. All right, our next group of ideas is organizing or cleaning your craft space. And this is a very big motivation factor for me. I often do this if I am stuck. Just a refresh of my workspace, cleaning it up. Let's face it, we're crafters. It gets very, very messy. Mine gets extremely messy, boxes coming in for reviews, that type of thing. Just for me to clean it out, organize it, get rid of things I don't use. And what happens is I find things I don't remember I even have. And all of a sudden, the ideas just start flowing. Like, oh my goodness, I forgot I even bought those tumblers and I cannot wait to use them in a video. I need to just stop cleaning and just do that video right now.
I find cleaning to be highly motivational. Like I said, I clean a lot, like while I'm just standing up and moving my bones. So I do that a lot. But if anybody watched my Dreambox video on Tuesday, and I did a little view of what the rest of my craft room looked like behind the camera, it was absolutely the hottest mess. And so I have a couple tips for actually making progress in cleaning, because sometimes, yes, you want to like find the cool stuff and that's awesome, but sometimes you're just like, I can't even function in here. Like I don't have space to craft because it's so messy. So I like to, again, turn on audiobook or music. And I'll do that on my computer. And then on my phone, I'll set it up as a time lapse and I'll film myself cleaning. And that gives me this motivation to actually do it. Like I can't get distracted on my phone because it's filming me. I don't want to sit down at my computer because I don't want it just to have a picture of me sitting down for a while. So I will like point it at a section of my craft room. I will clean that section of the craft room and I'll stop and then I can watch back like, whoa, that was amazing. And so that's one of my other tips is to sort of like, don't give yourself the opportunity to get distracted while you're cleaning. Just like make it. And then you can turn it into content. You guys will probably see a reel coming up for me in the next couple of days where I'm just like craft room reset and I'm just going to show all of the time lapses.
And I also feel like it's very satisfying to watch back, like,
So
the progress.
satisfying.
It is so satisfying. It is like, boy, I did a lot.
It's true. I mean, the videos are very impressive. I'm like, wow. I mean, like, and it's just so fast because you're like, okay, I spent, 15 minutes cleaning, but it was a 15-second clip. So it feels even more impressive when you watch it on a video.
And I do feel like if you set aside 10, 15 minutes at the end of the day, I call it like a reset of my craft area and just try to put everything away that's on my table. Like, don't get overwhelmed with it. Everything on the table, everything on the work surface, put it away. And if you can spend an extra 5 minutes and set up like the next project you want to do, the next day when you walk in, it's ready for you and you're ready to start going instead of needing to think through, okay, what supplies do I need for this and getting those out. Like, just getting to the crafting portion of it can often, like, get me out of a slump.
Absolutely. I love when I've set stuff up for myself. I don't remember what I read, but it was basically like I'm helping out future Corey. Right? So, and I do this all the time in my own house too, but I feel like it's like, okay, future Corey would really appreciate if I did this right now. And then future Corey, when the time comes, I'm always like, oh, thank you, past self. That was amazing. I'm so glad you did that. Yes, I do
And
talk to myself.
I feel like it's almost a mental hurdle, right? So you're like, "I need to do this. Oh, but first I have to clean off my entire work table, and then I have to find the supplies. Where did those supplies go? I know I got them. I know the shipment's here. Let me go find the shipment." And then it's like 2 hours later, and you're lost in your craft room. If you just, like, had cleared it off, gotten everything together the day before, your fresh start at the beginning of the day, I feel like.
Yeah, I love that idea. All right. Our next tip is to create a mood board, which is kind of, part for your mental, thinking about your whole business as a whole, but also sometimes pretty pictures are just helpful for motivation. I think sometimes just taking the time to create something beautiful in the form of something like a mood board. And I mean, at this point, I'm saying like print out pictures, cut out pictures. You can make a Pinterest board, but it's not nearly as great as having like a cork board near your computer with inspirational quotes or photos of kind of the sorts of things you're working on or goals or those sorts of things. Super motivational.
I found a perpetual calendar it was at Aldi of all places, which is a grocery store if you don't know, and it has motivational quotes, and they're very pretty, and so I can just use that year after year after year and flip through it, and every day I get, like, this burst of, like, inspiration that's very, very pretty and cute, and I don't have to think about it and do a whole lot.
I love that. Sometimes we just need to not think or do a whole lot because you're already overwhelmed. That's why you're probably unmotivated.
All right, our next group of tips is talking about celebrating small wins. Recognizing any small accomplishments, acknowledging your progress. And I have started trying to do this every single day. So instead of thinking about at the end of the day everything you did not get done and did not check off your to do list, flip it around. What wins did you have today? What did you get done? And celebrate that. So it has been a hard mindset shift, but I'm working on celebrating the wins every single day and not focusing on the things that went wrong that, this week has went wrong, but that's okay. I'm celebrating the wins. I'm celebrating the things that I got done this week.
I feel like for me, having them stored somewhere is really helpful for me. So maybe you can keep a small journal where you're just like your daily win, write it down, and then you can go back and read through them and say, okay, this is lovely. I also do a thing on my blog, which I probably should do for my store as well, is I call it my wall of wins, and it's basically good reviews. So if you're getting good reviews on Etsy, wherever you're selling, save those. Like take a screenshot, save them to a folder, put them somewhere so that you can go back and you can read like, okay, these people are giving me 5-star reviews. They were really happy with their products. All of these different things is really motivating, being like, okay, I can create more products for these people.
Yeah, customer feedback is extremely motivational. Positive feedback feeds your soul. So be sure to celebrate those, read all that feedback, and take it to heart because you are doing a good job. There are people out there that are going to recognize it. So be sure to keep track of that so you can read it on those days when you're down and get a bad comment. If you get a bad comment, read 10 good ones.
I mean, this is why we're constantly asking you guys to rate and review the podcast. Yes, it helps us get seen by other people, but also it's just a giant dopamine hit for us. And I mean, it's just nice to hear people say nice things about what you're doing. So I think that anytime you have that positive feedback that you can screenshot, put in a folder, take it out when you're just like feeling a little down or unmotivated, it's a great place to start.
And then celebrate those big accomplishments with something a little bit bigger. And it doesn't have to be monetary. It can be monetary. Like, let's face it, if you want those new pair of shoes, it can be really good motivation to get some stuff done with your business, but it doesn't have to be monetary. An extra day off. So, 2 extra hours of reading time would be great for me. Extra time to work a puzzle would also be a great motivator for me. So, something that motivates you, think about that and then set a goal. So this week, I'm going to get these 3 things done and don't make it overwhelming. And at the end of the week, I'm going to set 2 hours aside and I am just going to sit and read in my favorite chair in the fall with my ghost blanket on.
That sounds amazing. Let's
That
do
might have
that.
been personal.
It's personal for you, but it's also personal for me. All right. And then our final tip here is to revisit your why. So, your why is basically why you started your business. And you can think like, my why is to make more money. I mean, I think that's where we all think our why is, but like, why do you want to make more money? For me, it's so I can keep my boys in the school program that we have them in, or that I can, all these other things that we might want to do so that I can live the life I want to live. And so I think revisiting that why, revisiting like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. Even on these hard days when my brain just doesn't want to work, I feel like revisiting that original reason why you started your business can really be a good motivating thing.
And I feel like we had a podcast episode on this, but really digging down into the why can be difficult. It might take you some time, but eventually you're in this, what motivates me, what makes me happy within this business. Write that down. Be sure to keep going back to it because you tend to forget it over time. 2 years down the road, you will not remember the why that you set right, today. So be sure to keep going back to it, reminding yourself of why you're doing this. And 2 years down the road or however long, be sure to reflect back on everything you have accomplished because you have accomplished something. No matter if you're 6 months in, 1 year into your business, there are accomplishments you've made, and you want to be sure to reflect back on those regularly and just see how far you've come in this journey. I know Corey just hit 30,000 YouTube subscribers. I'm going to like celebrate with you a little bit. So that is like reflecting back of like how far you've come. Like you started at nothing, you started at 0, and now you're at 30,000. It's amazing.
I was just about to say the same thing because today was a big milestone. 30,000 followers is not nothing. And I really decided to put a lot of effort into YouTube about 2 years ago, and it was hard. There were tears. There was a lot of self-loathing. There was a lot of judgment of myself. There was a lot of, Angie, why am I doing this? It really was difficult. And now I can look back and say, okay, I have come a long way. I can film a video without crying. I can come into a live podcast and without like looking at my face and going, what the heck? All these different things that are both, yes, I've got to 30,000 followers, but it's also a huge change in myself without, bursting into tears.
All right. Are we ready to take questions from the chat, do you think?
Sure.
Okay, so if you are joining us on the YouTube Live, you can ask your questions in the chat, and we're going to answer a few of those. And I saw a question earlier, and I need to find it. Oh, boy. It was about what what was the a recent fiction book we've read that we liked? That's
I
why I
did
wanted to pull it up.
not see that one.
I
Well, I can
can't find who asked it.
oh my gosh, I read a lot, so I think I'm at 96 books for the year. So I have read
Yeah,
a lot of books.
I'm at right at 100 for the year, so that's, yeah, there's a lot of books to think about.
I think my favorite fiction book this year, which I feel like is I'm having a very hard time getting anybody else to read it with me, is a book called The Will of the Many, which is science fiction. It is basically about a hierarchy-based society. The writing is so good. I enjoyed the crap out of it. And the next book doesn't come out until April, and I cannot wait until it comes out.
There it is. And she did ask specifically for an audiobook recommendation. Did you listen to that one on
I
audio?
did listen to it. It was really good on audio.
Okay. I'm trying to think of one I am listening to Beneath the Whispering Door right now by TJ Klune, and very good on audio.
So
Very
good.
good. Yeah.
He's a great reader. I've listened to, I think, all of TJ Klune's books on audio, and Under the Whispering Door is one of my favorites. It was so good.
Yeah, it's very good on audio. So I would say that one on audio right now is probably top for me.
Yeah. I just listened to his newest one, Somewhere Beyond the Sea, and it's the same narrator. So good.
Yeah, I want to listen to that one as well.
I saw a question about working in a very tight space. Did you see that one?
I did. I'm scrolling.
From someone named Angie as well. So she says, any tips to work in a very tight room? I have to share with my full-time job and desk and storage for kitchen items that have no room to keep in the kitchen. So this was basically me before I got this studio. So when we lived in California, I was working in a very tiny bedroom and it had kitchen supplies in it because we just didn't have any storage in our kitchen. And yeah, it's tough. I just want to, first of all, say that it's difficult to work in a small space, especially when it has to have things that are not things that you necessarily would want to have in that space, right? You're like, I would much rather put vinyl there than a crock pot, right? And so I just want to, first of all, just say that's a valid way to feel. But I do feel like when you are working in a small space, you have to be so much more circumspect about what you keep and what tools you're going to actually use. You have to be really honest with yourself and just say, okay, I spent money on this, but it's not serving me, or I'm never going to use it. And somebody in my community could use it. Or I definitely need to find the room for this. So maybe that crock pot has to go. I only use it once a year, those sorts of things.
Yeah, I feel like we both started there. Now we've grown into separate spaces, but most people start in a small space that's also functions as a different thing in their home. It can be very hard. I started with just a desk in our walk-in closet. Very difficult. Again, tough decisions on like what to keep. Getting very creative with organization ideas because at that point I could not afford a dream box or any of those other organization tools. So getting very creative, repurposing things around my home to get more storage. And I would also recommend if you're not already going vertical. So if you only have the small desk, figure out a way to go vertical, like a desk hutch is what I use. So I had a very small desk, but I added a hutch to the top. So I was able to go vertical and use the height of the space instead of just like the flat surface of the space. And like a lot of times it's impossible to spread out horizontal in that circumstance, but you can go vertical.
Yeah, I had bookshelves for a long time. Lots of craft supplies on very like tall bookshelves just surrounding me because I didn't have anything else. And you can fit, a decent sized bookshelf in a fairly small amount of space. And you can get one that goes, almost to the ceiling. But yeah, it is difficult. I mean, we both started there, so we know from experience. There was a point where I was working from my dining room table when before I got married, and I would work on my dining room table, and then the set of drawers that should have held all sorts of kitchen stuff, I don't know what you call it, the sideboard in my kitchen, you'd open it up and there's just fabric in there.
And oftentimes in that situation, if you can even look on Facebook Marketplace, things that fold out. So instead of having like your work surface be clean all the time on the desk, you can have an option where you just fold out some kind of or a table that folds up. You fold out your work surface, clean your work surface off, you put it away, and you can use the work surface space on the desk for actual storage.
Yeah. Somebody mentioned my pegboard back here. This is another way to go vertical. I think a lot of people, I'm not going to name names about influencers, but I do feel like a lot of influencers like, I have just a rainbow of things behind me because it's cute. No, this is all practical. There's very little on this ball that is just hanging there because it's cute. I use all the washi tape, all the paint, all the scissors. Like I've got so many pairs of scissors up here. All of those have different purpose and I use them all. And I do feel like I had a smaller pegboard version of this in our small house before we moved here. It was a 4x4 or 2x2 to make 4. And then I added 2 more when we moved in. And I kept thinking I could probably fit a full dream box back here. But this is better. This is better for me because I also craft on this table that I'm sitting at and I can just grab a weeding hook or I can grab a bottle of paint or whatever I need. And it's just really, really practical.
Okay, I like this question right here. What about the days where you just want to throw your Cricut out the window? Some days everything goes bad, and we
Angie
feel
is
ya.
having a day like that today.
I'm
She
having a week.
yes, so she signed on this morning or before this thing, and she was like, "I am not gonna get it done."
It's just not going to happen. So I would say the first thing I do is I just accept it. It's not going to happen today. Like it's just not going to happen. I've accepted it. If I go into it tomorrow with a better attitude, things are going to go better. That's just the way it works for me. So right now, I'm just going to accept that what I'm working on today is not going to happen today because it's just been one thing after another. Just not going to get it done. So I'm just going to put it away and I'm going to start fresh again tomorrow. And whatever that looks like for you. So maybe that means that I do computer work this afternoon instead of the craft that I was working on. I can come off, do computer work, and actually get something done. And then tomorrow, jump into the craft with fresh eyes. And often, if I do it with fresh eyes, my Cricut machine's acting up. If I look at it with fresh eyes tomorrow, all of a sudden I'm like, oh gosh, I just needed to attach the two things together. What was I thinking yesterday? So
Or sometimes the
oftentimes it's just
glitch
less fresh eyes.
yeah,
Yeah.
or sometimes the glitch has reworked itself. For me, I feel like it's a lot of times if I'm having internet connectivity issues, just because we, like, have a mesh system, I don't know, ask my husband, to get the internet over here, and there are just some days where it's like, "No, I don't want to." And so those days, I can almost guarantee the next day is gonna be better, but I just have to, like, chalk it up to being like, "Okay, this is not a machine day. I have to go do something else." And I think having a flexible schedule allows for that. And that's very hard if you're working full time and you can only work in the evenings, or if you have little kids and you're working during nap time. I mean, I remember that if I would hit a frustrating something or other while my boys were napping when they were little, it was so hard. I would lose my mind. I mean, it was a big spiraling thing for me because I'm like, I have 1 hour. I have 1 hour to get things done. And then I would spend that time spinning my wheels. Ugh, so, so rough. But yeah, so I do feel like, depending on your circumstances, it can be harder or easier. I think because of the way that Angie and I now have our businesses, it's a little bit easier for us to pivot. There is always something different that I can do. um, but yeah, if you're like, oh no, I have to get this done for a craft fair tomorrow, it's a little harder.
Yeah, it can be devastating. So if you had to get it done, like there's not a choice, I would still take 10, 15 minutes and take a break. Stretch, go walk, do something, clear your head, and then come back. That way, maybe you'll still have those fresh eyes. It maybe not be the overnight fresh eyes, but at least be a little bit fresher. Some of the frustration lets out. Hopefully, like maybe turn on that girl playlist and just rock out for 5 minutes, just something to get it off your mind for a few minutes, then come back to it. And that often kind of helps clear the slate a little bit.
I feel like it's the same thing when you have computer problems and people are like, "Have you restarted it yet?" Try restarting yourself. Like, you just need to hit that reset button and be like, "Okay, I'm walking away for a few minutes." A lot of times I will go chat with my kids. I will take a walk outside. I'll grab a snack. I'll go do a load of laundry. I will just, like, step away and basically restart my brain and be like, "Okay." And then if your Cricut is really frustrating you, I mean, we understand. Um, but I think sometimes it's good to, like, restart everything technical in your office as well or in your studio. So restart the internet, restart your computer, restart your Cricut, all of those things as well. If it's a technical problem, I think at some point you're just like, I got to shut it down. Just start over.
All right, I'm going to pull this one up as well. Did you ever have to balance working a job and doing crafts? And you covered that a little bit, but I thought we'd cover it both as a question.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually started blogging 20 years ago this month, which is just insane. And I quit my job in 2013, so actually quit it 11 years ago. So I've been doing this full time for 11 years. So it's been a long time since I've had to both work and run my business. But yeah, I did it for a long time. I did it in the off hours. I did it in any time, any margins I could make. I was lucky enough that I didn't have the overlap of a job and kids and full-time and crafting. So I was single, engaged, crafting on the side of my full-time job. When I got married, I quit my job and then was able to work full-time. So I think if depending on how many things you're juggling, it can get harder or easier.
Yeah, so I did all the things all at once. So I was working full time as an engineer, had fairly small children, and started this business all at the same time. So yes, absolutely, I've had to balance, and a lot of it. I mean, I feel like we've covered it in the podcast before, but at that point, a lot of it is like working late nights. I would work very late at night, all night long, like while they were sleeping, very early mornings before anyone got up. So a lot of just times I could chunk out here and there and concentrate on the business portion. So I didn't quit my job until 2016. So I did, and I started my blog in 2010. So I did that for like 6 years of just kind of pulling out chunks of time wherever I can. And that's why I say when those devastating days happen, they are extremely devastating when you are working at 4:30 in the morning and you can't get anything to work.
I'm having like almost a PTSD flashback thinking about like the days when I couldn't get anything done during a nap time. Because for me, becoming a mom was very great, but it was also very difficult. I struggled with postpartum depression. I felt like I was losing myself. I really, really struggled when my boys were little. Awesome now, but if somebody gives you two infants, you're going to struggle, right? And so I do feel like the one thing I felt like I was good at was my job because I've been blogging for so long. I'd been crafting for so long. I felt very confident as a crafter. I felt confident as a business person at that point. And so when I felt like the rest of my life was out of control, I had these times where I could craft or I could make or I could do whatever I wanted to do in that hour while they were napping. And if it didn't go right, oh, it was not pretty. Oh, I don't even want to think about it. I'll cry.
And I do feel like pulling that back to motivation, those are the hardest years to stay motivated. I will say that. When you are doing it along with something else, along with a full-time job, along with raising small children, those are the toughest times to stay motivated and stay on track. It's very easy during those years to just say, you know what, I can give up this business side hustle that I'm doing and just not do it right now. So it's very easy to give that up and lose the motivation factor and the why of why you started selling.
I will also say, being a full-time caregiver to elderly parents or somebody with a disability, all of these things impact how much you have to give, how full your cup is, and you can only pour so much out of your cup before it's empty. And so you have what you have. And I talked about this in a recent video where I think it's really important for us to write down sort of the disadvantages and the advantages that we have as a person. As what is are the circumstances in my life that make it advantageous for me to run this business, and the things that I'm working against. So for me, working against me is the fact that I have fibromyalgia, and right now my back is killing me. And but there are other things that I have, like I have this giant studio now, and I have a very supportive spouse. So I feel like writing those things down and just being realistic about where we are, so that we're not setting unrealistic goals or comparing ourselves to other people who have a different circumstance than us, is just really important, and it's something we should all practice.
Yeah, it's very easy to compare yourself to that person that is doing this full time as their job and does not have another job to go to, does not have small children at home. It's very easy to compare yourself to that person when you just need to compare yourself to you. You are doing the best job that you can at this time. And yes, you're going to do all you can to stay motivated and stay on track, but you only have so much to give, I feel like. So you also have to take that into account.
All right, before we wrap up, let's talk about our episode in two. Did we lose Angie again? Shoot. Did I talk over her? Are we good?
Nope, keep going.
Okay, I'm gonna start over. Before we wrap up, let's talk about our episode in 2 weeks. We'll be joined by Tisa Jackson, who has her own small crafting business at This Is Tisa. We are going to be talking about packaging and shipping, from choosing the best packaging materials to saving on shipping costs. Tisa will be sharing her insider knowledge to help you choose the right shipping options for your products and elevate your customers' unboxing experience. So make sure to tune in for that.
And if you want to keep supporting the show, take a moment, rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform. Again, it's for our dopamine. And of course, it helps the podcast as well. Every review helps us get discovered by more amazing crafters. And if you like this episode, you have a friend that needs some motivation with their crafting, text this episode to them right now and tell them to listen or watch.
And then make that person your accountability buddy.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.